when I travel around the country, people point to the reentry programs as part of that. Some people point to policing. Many people point to reentry programs. But how do we not put the message out there that that is the solution? Because that is only part of the solution. And how do we as reentry programs not become part of the problem?
And that's a very good question you posed, Glenn. I know invariably we find that there are many, many challenges with this whole issue of, organizational mania, if you will. And how do we address that? I know for one thing, from my observation and my interaction with various organizations, that many of the organizations are finding themselves hamstrung from interacting with each other because they can't meet with each other, can't share ideas because of funding reasons, right? And that's like the major problem in many instances why organizations can't work together. But then, at the same time, as we become siloed, we promote our own selves, but then what happens, right? It creates this whole world of one group is better than the other, and then there's these comparisons that are set up, and I think that causes a wedge in between the organizations and really interferes with the work of empowering the people that we're seeking to serve. So some of those challenges, I think, of us, really perpetuating this whole notion of organizations and, how many they are and how effective they are, sometimes really trumps really serving the people that we're supposed to. I believe, Glenn, and for the rest of the folks that's in this room, that the major goal is to no longer have reentry organizations, right, from my vantage point. That the work that we do, of course, it will probably never happen in my lifetime, but I think that's the goal, to not have reentry organizations and to not find ourselves at variance over different approaches and to be hamstrung by not being able to interact with each other owing to funding reasons. So when we're talking about this whole notion of organizations and how important they are, I think the individuals we serve are far more important than the organizations themselves. And I think by the work that we do, that we get to understand that more and we share evidence-based practices with each other. We go into the communities, as she's suggesting, and inform the very people we're seeking to serve. Then it will reduce the need for organizations. It will reduce the need for incarcerating people because people will be an informed constituency, and by extension, it will change society and its laws.
So I think that's a good start to the conversation. I'm going to push the audience to push him and other folks on that one, because I would love to hear more concretely what organizations like Fortune and Osborne can be doing differently to help support the work of many of the folks in this room.
Yeah, what's going on right now is you're starting to see a lot of mergers. You're starting to see a lot of the bigger organizations collaborating, merging. I think Harlem United, PSI, and another big group just merged to make this huge agency together. And what we find is that although there are this number of clients out there, we're still all fighting for the same client, which is why we have the difficulty in collaborating with each other because we want that same client. So there's this mass number of clients out there, but we're all fighting for the same client so that we can get the same funds. So Osborne wanted it, Fortune wanted it, Samaritan wanted the funds, we want this contract, we RFP, and we're all basically fighting for the same few dollars for the same few clients. And that's what I've experienced.
Are you suggesting then that you get eventually going to build, which it seems to be in financial industry where I come from, it seems to be that they're building towards this big, humongous, too big to fail. Because if you're going to merge all these corporations together so they can now have this whole bundle of process, they become just the same as they are now, right? I mean, they become the dominators of that process rather than letting it. I kind of like the idea of what you were saying, is that the individual should be trained, that the individual should have a right, and that right is for them to review, understand these processes, rather than have some other organizations come in and do that for them.
Who's the individual you're
Well, would you be incarcerated?
the client? So that's interesting because I know the former Commissioner of Correction, Martin Horn, used to suggest that when people exit prison, they should have, for lack of a better term, sort of a debit card that gives them access to services, and they shop to decide where they want to seek out services. So that's one approach. Another approach that the state seems to be taking increasingly is these risk assessment tools. Yeah, that audible response says a lot. But So yeah, so we're looking for solutions, and people in the state are trying to come up with solutions, and that's one of the solutions they've come up with. So clearly, the audience is sort of chomping at the bit to get involved in this conversation. I think that's valuable. I'm literally going to go around the room this direction, sir. Sure.
well-
Wait, hold on. I'm sorry.
Recently too, there has been a collaboration, particularly in the delivery of record repair services, that is the requesting of people's conviction history, and that is a collaboration between, legal entities in the city, nonprofit legal entities, Legal Action Center, Community Service Society, Youth Representatives, and Bronx Defenders, and actually engaged in a relationship with the Department of Probation, which we were quite leery, but given the cultural shift in there, as was discussed this morning, and that we have actually joined together in delivering record repair counseling services, so that one entity on itself recognized that we could not service the boroughs, so that together we are now doing it.
So that's one example of a collaboration between organizations to deliver services. Again, I want to push the audience. Is that a good thing, or are there some service providers that don't necessarily need to be in this space? I mean, I know when President Bush talked about reentry in the State of the Union address and then asked Congress to do something about it, and the Second Chance Act was created and funded upwards of $100 million, there were a lot of people who redefined what it is they were doing. And suddenly they all became reentry organizations. And so, yeah, so I want to have honest, uncomfortable conversation. I think the young lady here was actually just before you.
Yes, I did have a question. It speaks to, I guess, your statement about having informed clients and also to collaborating with nonprofit organizations to create a very strong advocacy effort on the part of reentry providers. Because I was looking at what other states are doing for clients to kind of ease the transition from prison to communities. And I know in Kentucky, they provide not only reentry pamphlets that actually spell out each step and every single service that's provided by every single provider in the area, but they also provide a hotline. And I thought that would be very great, especially because New York City already has the infrastructure in place to do something like that. Like the New York City Library has reentry booklets, and I know Brooklyn has reentry booklets that are provided, but it's not mandated that the state provide those things upon reentry or upon release, although it is mandated to provide $40 in a sweatshirt, don't give them anything else. But also, perhaps equipping the people who are on the 311 lines with, I guess, all of the list of services that are available. So we will have a reentry hotline using the capacity that the state, the city already has to kind of facilitate our reentry. So these are just ideas that I was thinking of, but what is the possibility of doing something like that in our advocacy efforts?
So,
I think, I mean, it's very clear that New York City is saturated with these reentry services, and, the whole country is saturated with these kind of reentry services. But when we're talking about working with individuals and empowering them, I think the fact of creating pamphlets is good, maybe a 311 is good, but it's nothing like the one-on-one kind of discourse and interaction with an individual, right? Empowering that person and informing them from a perspective that's not skewed by other people's perception of that person. And I think a part of what happened in my overall transformation development after having served 16 years in prison myself is that I met people who were informed, who became politicized and became advocates while inside. That began to infect me, and then I passed that on to other people. And so I think the major thing is to begin to work with people individually to make them become informed constituencies so they can begin to change their condition in their environment. I think the part of the reason why a lot of people are coming back to prison is because their environment hasn't changed. And it's almost like the tuberculosis model, if you will. An individual is contained, right, in this environment, right? You identify a person that has tuberculosis, you take them out of this environment, put them in another environment. That person that's in that environment is not really treated per se, nor is the environment that's infected with tuberculosis that changed or treated. So you have this individual with the experiencing something, then going back to the very community, being reinfected with the same thing that they just left from. Because there's no mentorship, there's no engagement, there's no transformation in the thinking because people aren't informed.
So I'm going to allow Donna to respond, and then we're going to move on.
I want to take it a step further by going a step back. I
coming out after doing almost 30 years in prison, this is all new to me. I want to go backwards a minute and say that for me, re-entry, first of all, I don't even want to come out here with that. Let's go back inside. Something needs to be in place inside while we're there before we get out to get into this.
Yes.
Because I'm saying to you right now, keeping it real, because all this, I'm getting a little, because I think we're missing a mark here. I did 27 years. I did not know what a cell phone felt like, looked like, and was like until it was thrown at me. And I needed it and didn't know what to do with it the day after I got out. I didn't know, and I still don't know, and I'm learning how the computers, the internet looks like and what it does, how it functions, how it gets me through. You can't get a job if you don't know how that works. Let's go backwards. You cannot throw somebody out and expect them to reintegrate and to progress and to do anything for themselves if you don't get it at its root. And the root is before they come out. There is nothing in place. We say that there is, but I'm saying that there's not. And I don't see it happening, and I think that's where the fight, the argument, everything needs to go back to. Let's get back inside. Let's get back inside. Now, I did almost 30 years. I did not, and I still don't know a lot of things. I am learning as I go, and I'm open for it. But like you said, Andre, it's infected because you bring somebody out, you throw them back into the same environment, and so what's going to happen? They're going to shut down. My psyche's a little messed up. I'm not going to say that I'm fine. My psyche's messed up because I don't get it yet. And a person that has done a long amount of time doesn't get it like that. Does not get it. And so what happens is you shut down if you have no support systems in place. So you do need the re-entry stuff once you come out. But before you come out, you have to know what you're coming out to. You have to know what you're coming out to. There are so many, the phones are different, TV is different. There's so much I can name it. Crossing the street is different. I didn't know that there's a white-looking thing, looks like a guy on the thing means walk, and the red hand means I don't know that. I'm scared to death. I still now hold someone like I need a little help because it shakes me. Cars weren't driving by me while I was inside. Big trucks are coming. I shut down. I still shut down a year later because it's overwhelming. We have to get to the root of that. We have to see that is very, very important. We have to think of something to do at that point. After a long period of time, a person cannot be thrust back into the society with nothing to come out with. And then the re-entry process is definitely important once we get out. But it has to come back inside.
One question and hopefully one response so that we get through all the questions before we're done. Sir.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad that Tanya just said what she said. Look, I'm from the private sector. I'm a lawyer, I'm a member of a private equity group, and I'm a recent board member of the Correctional Association of New York. So I'm relatively new to this whole area, but my focus is on the bottom line. And we are trying to create a program that we call an impact investment. That is to blend a private enterprise function with working with strategic partners like the Osborne Association and others. And the program basically is to buy distressed housing and open up employment opportunities for previously incarcerated people to work directly on that. Now what Donna just said, and the questions that I have, and again, I'm looking at the bottom line and I'm relatively new here, what practical programs, let's talk about practical, concrete, bottom line. What programs can all of us advocate to start introducing into the prison? That's number one. I don't know what the answer is, but if you're just putting people in prison and you're insulating them and you're not giving them any ability to restore and learn, that's no good. The next question is, what can we... Well, I just want to listen to these questions. You don't have to answer them now.
Okay.
So let me listen. Take a second.
Okay.
What can the business world do? What can lawyers do? And what can our elected officials do? That's my question
I wish I was on the panel right now.
Education is primary.
Absolutely.
First and foremost. So if you want to start anywhere, you're going to start with education. You're going to give them the opportunity to learn.
Well, how do we
That
do
goes
that?
from GDP, you have to, it goes back to money. I'm going to start right there. It's about economics. We have to put money into this system. We're taking money out of it. They're making billions and billions of dollars off the prison industrial complex. It's been said time and time again, like Andre said, we're reiterating the same things over and over and over. We're screaming, yes, this is what it is. You gotta educate them. You gotta provide housing. You gotta provide employment. It's not cheap. It's very basic human needs. We know what we need. The money is out there. $55,000. You can give them that $55,000. You know what? How many people here make $55,000 a year? You don't have to raise your hand. $55,000 a year, people can live off of that. You're incarcerating them with that. Take that money and put it somewhere where it's of better use.
But, we all correct in this room. We have the information. We know, we've done the unheard third survey at the Community Service Society. When people were polled, they said, yes, we would agree to have, we want vocational and educational training in the prison. We have the information. What does it take now to make that happen? Because every year we come back and we say we know what it takes. We know what it takes. We know it takes how many, $55,000 a year to house a person in prison if they turn that money around. What do we do now with this information and the people who are affected? How do we make that happen?
So, no, I'm going to keep going. I think we have to continue to think of how corporate America can help us to get out of this mess. Yeah, right.
I don't really have a question. I have two comments. I know I'm supposed to ask a question, but one of the things that I find is very interesting that this is happening, and it continues to happen all the time. But I personally believe that there are some phenomenal individuals who are doing this work. I mean, absolutely. I already know that I'm one of them, but I also know that I'm still learning. That I haven't gotten to a point where I know it all. Because Donna will tell you something very different from just coming home, from me coming home so many years ago. So the question to me is, why do we allow, and I mean, Glenn said something that was interesting, but why do we keep saying, what are we going to do, how are we going to do it, when Fortune's already doing it, and I don't want to say Fortune, Glenn's already doing it, Vivian's already doing it, Eddie's already doing it, Andre's already doing it, Ronald Day's already doing it. Why haven't we captured that opportunity? I know it's because of money, but why haven't we? People are afraid that formerly incarcerated people are going to do with new leadership here and take over. They're going to have a college. It's going to be college and formerly incarcerated college and development. And they're going to teach so many things. It's so many people out here that we can assist. That's formerly incarcerated. We should start before incarceration, but that's formerly incarcerated. We don't have to keep grabbing each little piece and separating all of it. You know, we have to think of a structure that is already existing and put it inside the facility. Everybody don't want to go to college. Everybody don't want to go whatever. But whatever it is, there's people who've already done it. Ask them. And take the state money. Sorry about that. Take the state money and make it happen. Now, something else that I found very interesting about, Glenn said something which I wouldn't have thought that probation ever works in any, don't put probation in my agency. But Glenn said something, and he didn't say it this morning, that I thought was very interesting. So when they put probation in these community operations, it's not about the probationer, it's about the probation officer. Because Glenn said they stood outside, then they eased, they were in the building. I don't know, he can tell you the real story. But we need to change the perception of officers, of people. I must tell you, I live in East New York. When the guy with the hood died, people were standing on my corner taunting the officer. Yeah, mister, I wish you effing shoot me. Like, my community has no clue. All they know is an officer in Florida. And the man on the corner standing by himself, a new officer, scared to death, and they all taunting him from the building. So we have to train and develop, and whatever that connection is we hate police, and they're going to take us back to prison and stop and frisk. We have to do something about that as a people. And that's something that doesn't take a lot. of money in the moment.
Thank you.
Can I get
Thank
a
you.
20-second response to that, Glenn? Probably 20. Let me just say this too. I think what's critical to the whole notion of empowering people from a social worker's perspective is that whole notion of cultural competency, right? The social work folk in this room, are we speaking to the individual's experience? Are we affirming who they are, their culture, their folkways, their mores? Are we showing them how inextricably connected they are to their community? A lot of times we're speaking with people and servicing people to whom we give them no frame of reference from which to choose from. They don't know who they are. They don't know where they fit at in society, in their community. They don't know anything about their history. And I think as we're working with people, fundamental to empowering people that are formerly incarcerated is giving them a cultural frame of reference from which to understand. And once they understand that, then they move a little more differently in their community. They're more culpable. They're more sensitive to when somebody dies in their community, when someone's robbed, when someone's victimized, when society seems to not affirm human beings irrespective of their color. So let's always keep that in mind too. A part of our work has to be about affirming people's cultures and making that a part of who they are, and by extension going into the world being a better person.
Sir?
I don't know where to start. I don't know where to come to you, but
Can I get you to project a bit? Sorry,
yeah, I don't know where to start. I don't know whether to come to you or to come to you. However the case, you both made some solid stuff that I was very interested in. But I'm gonna go back to what you said about breaking up the monopoly of different programs they have set. And they argue over, let me get this person, let me get that person, and the fact that coming out, someone's coming out of there and going into a community, and there's really nothing in that community, in that community they're going to. There's nothing in there to welcome them. There's no one there to welcome them. They have to first get there, meet that parole officer. The parole officer here, there's a certain thing you have to do. I want you to go over here and refer them outside of the community, like you said, outside of the community to another agency that said do this, but then he got to go back into that same community with no support. The programs that you have are, from what I understand, are very helpful. But I think that utilizing that money to put it like satellite agencies inside those fallen communities to help individuals. Like you said, you get the guy that come out, you straighten him out, get him going. The next guy, he's going to be just as welcoming. He's right there. I'm in the community. We're in the community. I can show you. I can walk with you. Coming out of prison, and helping a person that's been there for some time, they can help them navigate their struggles. You have some place immediately in the community. You don't have to get on a train and go downtown. You can wake up in the morning and say, let me walk down to the corner and go meet my peoples and navigate get my mind right. Get me set. Get me straight. The question?
Yeah.
What is the possibility of having that done?
And you're talking in terms of creating like satellite kind of annexes, if you will, in communities, right? Extensions of organizations. I don't think that's far-fetched. Essentially, I think it's highly likely and probable that that can happen. But then we need buy-in from the community if the community wants that. And see, oftentimes the community is historically excluded from the decision and discussion processes as it relates to what happens there. So invariably, as they experience this, they don't, feel, if I don't have any say in them, I don't want that here. And are we engaging our community folk? Are we sitting down with those moms and those dads and those teachers, right, and those elders and saying, is this okay, right? And then to articulate why it may be okay, right? And not to present skewed data and fudge data and all that kind of stuff, but just very basic conversation. This is what's happening in the community. We have to change it. What do you think we need to do? What do you think we need to do? Not we're going to bring an annex or a satellite in. Does that make sense?
I actually think there are a lot of programs in the community. I know I don't go out to Canarsie or Bay Ridge or the other east side for treatment programs that I work at. They're all in the communities of distress. I mean, South Jamaica, Queens, Samaritan Village had programs over there, and Harlem is flooded with every kind of substance abuse, methadone maintenance, mental health program. That's where the programs actually are. So they're in the communities, I think the young lady asked about accessing them, how to access them. And the 311 model is a phenomenal idea. Why is it not happening? Because people don't want you to access it. Why don't they want you to access it? Because they want us in prison. It's the industrial complex that is just continue to recycle itself. Why would they make it easy for you to figure out how to stay out when you're more valuable as a commodity in prison? They don't want you to know where it's at, my brother.
Did you want to add something quickly to that?
I think we keep belaboring the point. Why? And we have the information. The information is that we walk out this door quite intentionally to the varying zip codes that we elaborated and illustrated on, and that we have the will to go and have these conversations for communities who themselves are at a point where they too have been ravaged, right? Where they too have suffered at the hands of guns, us against each other. Where mothers have to be stepping over children who are ravaged by crack, who themselves need to be assisted to begin to reconceptualize that the re-entering people are my sons and my daughters, my husbands, my uncles, so that we have first to bring our people there before we just roll up in there with these satellites, but that they can happen together, that our people themselves will begin to advocate for these satellites. And I'm hearing that we too are putting barriers in the way of this work beginning to happen. It needs to happen outside of Amsterdam Avenue within the locales of Columbia University. It needs to happen on the Gates Avenue within the locales of the Section 8 housing and the NYCHA housing. It needs to happen wherever these housings are. And that's where the monies need to be directed towards. There's something else that I'm hearing. I'm hearing a great distinction between formerly incarcerated people and between people of color, period. Between formerly incarcerated people and black and brown people. And that what plagues black and brown communities inherently plagues formerly incarcerated people. That at some point or the other, black and brown people would have had some engagement with the prison industrial system. So that we have to be mindful that when we say, what are they afraid of? They're afraid of formerly incarcerated people coming back and take over. They're not afraid of formerly incarcerated people. They are afraid of black and brown people who have the information, who dare to get the information while they were away with the degrees and letters behind their name. That's what they're afraid of. So that if we begin to separate this group from the other group, we need to be working collectively. We need to broaden our thinking within the whole context of the continued surrogate, racist, Jim Crow system as it's now unfolding today. So that as we go back to our respective sites and desks and work, and as we begin to engage with our clients, we do it. We do it in our work. We do service provision as a subversive activity. That each client that comes in front of me is an asset to my neighborhood. That each client who is taken away from me destabilizes my neighborhood. It destabilizes my community. It destabilizes the work that Harriet Tubman, Denmark Vesey, Sojourner Truth, Martin Luther, Malcolm did. That's what it does. That's how we do our work. That's how I do this work. That's how I do the work with the interns who are with us from Columbia. No intern is going to come to the Community Service Society with me as a staff person and my colleagues and not address their white privilege as they interact with their clients. They have to address their white privilege. I don't want a guilty set of practitioners running around serving black and Latino people. I don't want white, and you all who are getting into the social work schools, I don't want you as a practitioner to come in just to help my black and brown people. I want you to recognize that my black and brown people, they have a problem that was caused by the bigger problem. Sometimes people ask, how do we expect the people who created the problem to fix the problem?
You know, these are the questions where we have to begin to ask. We will have this same conference next year. What would I want for this conference next year? I would want for us returning. This is my vision statement. People coming in with their reports of how successful they were as they went to the million-dollar block neighborhoods and they were able to engage the people and the policy that came out of the people, that they were able to go to their individual elected officials and were able to push up against, so that when brothers and sisters came home, there was a satellite site that was an information center that sent them out to their respective areas of interest. That would be successful from a conference like this. That we as practitioners take it upon ourselves subversively under the rubric of the outcomes that the foundations ask us for and that the grant makers ask us for. But we know we are doing the work, and you are the generation to do it with us.
Who needs Angela Davis?